advice on how to manage third-party risk in the cloud.
Catalog every single application connected to any one of your environments, whether it was sanctioned or not.
That is some good advice. Richard, do the complete opposite for me. Give me some bad advice on managing third-party risk in the cloud.
Download anything from the marketplace and turn it on.
Simple as that. All right, Brian, one up that. Give me some worse advice on dealing with third-party
I say
risk in
you
the cloud.
turn off MDM on all of your employee devices so that they can download whatever they want, because our goal is to further the mission of the business. You should enable collaboration. You should make it easy for your users to do what they need to do to get their job done. Controls
Get ready. It's Super
Good point.
Cyber Friday.
Thank you very much, Brian. Thank you very much, Richard. Today's topic is hacking third-party risk in the cloud. An hour of critical thinking about the underappreciated risks introduced by your sanctioned and unsanctioned SaaS apps. We'll be dealing with both of those, for that matter. Here, how do I move this thing ahead? Hold on, how do I get this thing to go forward to the next slide? Why am I having issues with this? Is this not moving ahead? Hold on.
I see the title.
Help me out with why is this not moving ahead? PDF. There's like no little arrow button here. Solo. Use the arrows. Use my own arrows. Oh, there we go. Okay, there we go. I had a little bit of technical difficulty. Human error there. Hey, our guest today, who just met moments ago, Richard Rushing, who's the CISO of Motorola Mobility, and Brian Vecchi, who's the field CTO of Varonis. And guess what? Varonis, they're our sponsor today. Thank you so much, Varonis, for sponsoring this. In fact, they've been a phenomenal sponsor of the CISO series. We love having them. And we've had Brian on many times before, and he is awesome as well. As you will see how he does, especially when we played the Department of Yes game. All right, lots of different ways to participate. Let me just clearly cover the bad idea and the 10% better tip. Just the bad idea is how not to approach third-party cloud risk, how not to deal with it. Now, you already heard a couple of bad ideas to, grease the wheels here, but we want to hear your bad ideas. But we also want to get your 10% better tips. Oh, we're not going to have any polls. Number 4 is not there. Oh, actually, we'll have a kind of a little poll. This new version of Crowdcast has some serious problems with the polls. Once that is corrected, we're going to bring the polls back. But until then, we're unfortunately going to dump the polls. And we will be the judge and jury on what are the bad and the good ideas, too, for that matter. By the way, any of you can come on at any time during the show by just typing "bring me on." By the way, though, for the bad ideas and the 10% better, just make sure you label it bad idea or 10% better. Sometimes we can't tell the difference between the two. All right. Also, ask questions. With this new format, you see there's like a little speech bubble with a little question mark in it. Click on that. Ask your questions. We love to deal with your questions, so please send those in. So here's today's schedule. Good ideas, bad ideas. We're going to play the public interest. We'll play the Department of Yes, last question advice, and then we'll have our meetup, which is super duper fun. If you're new here or you've never come to one of our meetups to the end, please stick around for that. That will change. You'll find a link to that at the very end of the show. So please stick around for that. And then very last thing I want to mention is our next scheduled show will be next Friday. We'll be talking about hacking SOC 2, an hour of critical thinking on trust, security, and compliance. Guess what? There's a link at the bottom of the screen. You can register for that at any time during this recording. It will not take you out of our discussion right now at all. It will... You'll very much be able to register for next week's and still be a part of this. So please get involved in the chat. And do we already have bad ideas coming in? Let me see. Yes, bad ideas are coming in. Thank you, Larry Rosen. All right. So please get your bad ideas. And Saskia, hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly. All right. I'm going to start with you, Brian. Mm-hmm. Here's the big thing, and we talked about this in the preview video. It's like we used to talk about shadow IT, but you actually don't hear that term that much anymore because shadow IT is business as usual, isn't it? Like this whole idea of everyone spins up their own app whenever they damn please, which was the bad idea that Richard recommended just moments ago, essentially. That is sadly business as usual, but I mean, there is a certain level of control over it if you've got a good security department and you're communicating it to your team. How did we go from shadow IT to business as usual? Because, again, that term, we rarely use the term shadow IT now.
I think, so I still hear shadow IT a lot, but I often hear shadow IT really, it's it's always in the same sentence when we talk about third-party risk. I don't know how sad it is, but I think with the advent of cloud, the advent of SaaS, where you don't need to get IT involved. You don't need somebody to spin up a server for you or spin up a database if you want to bring in a new application. If you're a business user or an entire department, we've seen, you just put down a credit card. You find a vendor gives you a pitch. You say, this sounds like a great idea. You put down a credit card, you install it. It installs either an app or usually it's an app on your phone, or you go through a web browser. You say, hey, we need to connect to Salesforce, or we need to connect to your 365 environment, or can we connect to G Drive or Box, or can we connect to your Workday? Can we connect to SAP? Can we connect to Snowflake? Whatever it might be, and you just say yes, of course. I don't think it's sad necessarily. It is a great way for, Varonis is a SaaS platform. Everybody's a SaaS these days. There's lots of benefits to it. But what it means is, what it means is, instead of shadow IT, now IT and security departments need to worry about an entire ecosystem of business applications that they may not know about until they're already business critical. It's
right. Because I think what the story is shadow IT has turned into not the individual necessarily spinning up, because that's business as usual, but like what you said, it's the new and old interconnectivity that has just essentially arisen the moment you spun that up, right? Like, okay, now what are we connected to? What did we accept all connections? Like you said, Snowflake and all these other systems. Richard, maybe you can tell us, like, in the evolution, have you seen this happen as well? Like, did it all of a sudden we're just seeing more connectivity to other things the moment apps are being spun up?
Yes, you constantly see these scenarios that you go through, because an app by itself has data to send somewhere, and it needs to. And with the shadow IT, you're seeing what used to be things that were stood up to sell swag for your business, or marketing. You're doing an event series and you stand up a vanity URL. Those used to be done in shadow groups or third-party kind of stuff that was like, oh, we're paying $2,000 for a website, we can do it ourselves. That used to be a lot of the shadow underworld that's in the organization. Now we just stand up the web, spin it up, it's in Amazon, we're good, we look like a real organization. And I think that's part of the issue is that you no longer, it is out of the control. If it's out of the offices and it's not there, it's very hard to figure out that someone is doing something that they shouldn't be doing, especially when it's in the cloud, because most organizations lack that visibility. It's like, hey, I just send everything to Amazon, Google, Microsoft, and it's like, well, I'm trying to figure out what's talking that's different. Well, there's millions of things going on. How am I going to find the needle in the haystack?
So, Brian, I know that over at Varonis, you offer a scan that you do that sort of reveals a lot of this stuff. And by the way, audience, if you aren't not aware that Varonis will offer a free scan for you of your sort of SaaS environment. Am I getting this correct, Brian?
Yeah, you are. It's really interesting how it just completely by coincidence, I always happen to be a guest on your show when Varonis is a sponsor. I don't know how that keeps happening. But
it's amazing.
So it's really amazing, and it's always directly relevant to what I know. But yeah, we will go out and do a risk assessment of your SaaS environment. What we find, and this speaks directly to Richard's point, it's not just that you have these third-party SaaS apps that are connected into your AWS or Microsoft or Google or Salesforce environment, what have you. It's that these are all connected together too. So it's, you might have an app that actually connects to multiple of your environments. And then the hard thing to figure out isn't necessarily that something is connected. That's relatively easy. We can look at all the app registrations in Azure ID or Entra ID and show you all of those applications. Usually there are ones that security doesn't know about. There's often ones that are still registered and active, even though the contract with the vendor has ended. That's always a fun one. Why does this app still have access to all of our data? But what's really, really interesting, and what we reveal when we do these risk assessments, is all of the apps that are connected and then what they have access to. If one of your business users downloads an app and contracts with a vendor and then says, yep, and that little window comes up and says, we're connecting into your 365 environment, you want to give us permission? And they say yes. Suddenly the third-party app has all of the access that person does because they have the authorization to grant all of that.
Which, so by the way, people give that access so blindly. And I'll just quick story. I can't even remember what the name of the app was, but it was because I was working with a sponsor and they wanted to send me a document that used a specific app. And I remember when I was about to install it, it said, this app has access to your contacts and can look and delete your contacts. And I was like, and normally I ignore these things too. And I was like, whoa, you can delete my contacts.
Well, what's really interesting is sometimes people don't realize that the data that, or what the access that they're granting is actually granting access to sensitive data. Our VP of Global Incident Response and Cloud, Matt Radulek, tells a story about something getting access to his calendar. Now, he's our VP of Incident Response, which means his calendar, all of the items in his calendar, even just the titles, are big company name, major data breach, right? So that is really sensitive information. The other thing is, we know, and Richard, I'm sure you can speak to this in detail, people have access to way too much, right? It's really, really hard to make sure that a business user A or department B only has access to what they're supposed to. So suddenly they're granting access to third parties that security has no visibility into, no idea that this is happening, and they're over granting access just because these people in these departments have way more sensitive information, access to way more than they even realize. We found source code in people's OneDrives before, for instance.
Well, let's not forget their password files.
111,000 clear text passwords we found in one 365 environment, because a spreadsheet's the new Post-it note, right? Yeah. I want to be able to access it from anywhere, know what my passwords are, so I just drop them into a Google Doc or
it's called OneNote for a reason. You only need one note.
Yeah. All right, so Richard, let me ask you that the story you tell about Matt Radulek about having all this sort of sensitive information just in his calendar. I got to think that, Richard, this needs to be just a general discussion. Like, the obvious. Let me just set you up a little bit. Is that the obvious thing is, the people in accounting and the people in finance, but it's like, well, wait, let's stop for a second. Like, what is the kind of stuff these individuals on our staff have, and maybe do you have to ID the sort of the Matt Radulek equivalents that aren't technically in accounting and finance that are going to have this kind of sensitive data? How do you do this?
It's in a lot of cases, and this kind of manifests itself in parts of this. It manifests in the collaboration suites, so SharePoint and everything else. Hey, just give it access to everyone in the whole entire company. The number of salary spreadsheets that have been linked that way, and it's a user side of it. And we have this push that it's like, users should not be responsible. This is a department thing, but no, users are the responsible. If somebody is actually thinking about this, they're like, I don't want to grant access to everyone to be able to see it. That's why they invented personal on your calendar, is I don't want to see different things that are there. But calendars, you've seen it for years where people will attach presentations to calendars. And the simple fact is, if you didn't mark that, I can see the calendar, I can see this presentation, even if I wasn't necessarily invited into that meeting on those cases or just looking at the other side of it, the titles, giveaway, merger and acquisition, all these different things are there. We know what the data and what the function is. The problem is people like to not forget. For some strange reason. It's like, remember when we were supposed to tag all these documents or do stuff around that? They're like, that was horrible. I don't want to ever. And it's like, that was 10 years ago. Technology has dramatically changed. And I think that's part of the issue is the only thing that people know how to block is when a website blocks and says, I want to send you notifications. They're like, no, I made that mistake once and never again. And I think that's the point. It's a user's responsibility, and it's a need to know. The world doesn't operate on a business that goes, everybody needs to know everything. I know we have a transparency requirements and models, but at the same time, when you're getting into that, you can't go back and say, everybody needs to know. Accounting, no one should be looking at accounting except for maybe accounting and some sales folks. You know who does the data. The problem is, those are controls. Those are things we don't want to add. They impact people. They cause friction. And we open those controls up more. And that's part of the security. Problem is now, those little holes, the bad guys come right back in through those. And they know
and all of these platforms, Richard, are designed for collaboration. It's not like in the old days where if you wanted access to a spreadsheet in someone's personal folder, it was a real pain in the butt to get. Like, how do I get access to that? Or if I want access to a document that's sitting on your laptop, like 10 years ago, that would be that you'd have to email it to me or you'd have to put it somewhere else. These days, you click on it, you click a link, and I've got access to it instantly. And if you make a link that anybody can use, suddenly that's open to everybody in the company. We did another one of these.
I can request access.
Yeah, you can just say,
if anything else, it's like,
this.
so you think about it. Okay, you request access to this that I don't have access to, but you told me in the title of the spreadsheet that's actually there. Unless the spreadsheet is 111111111. No, what is it? Q4 financial results. Or salary or something else. And somebody's going to get that, and it's like, on a busy day, I can tell you, just like attackers do, if I send those messages between 8 and 10 a.m., the local time of the person, of the owner that's there, or between 4 and 5, guess what? The likelihood that they're going to actually research it and not go, I'm leaving right now, I'm going to click OK and be done with this.
Yes. All right. We have our first game coming up. Hold tight.
Do you know what others are thinking? On the public interest.
All right, here we go. This is how the game's played. It's going to be pretty obvious to you, Rich. I don't know if you've played this one, but Brian, I know you have. Most average monthly search queries: assessment, audit, or compliance. What do you think it is? And audience, please play along. Assessment, audit.
Do you want us to go in order? Who gets to guess first?
You get either one of you.
I think
You
it's
guess the same
probably
one.
compliance, because if somebody's doing any of the other two, they're probably going to search for compliance first. That's my guess.
Do I get to choose the same one, or did he take
No,
mine?
you can choose the same one. You told me.
I would
Everybody in
say
the chat is choosing C too.
Everyone's
say C
going
as well.
C. Let's see. Actually, I don't know the answer to this. Actually, I didn't create this one. It was our other producer, Rich, who did this. Let's see what the answer is. Hold on. Why is it? Come on. Click.
Somebody in the chat said secret formula for Coke.
Tied between assessment and compliance, so you both win. Okay, one and one. Both of you are doing very well. Okay, next one. Identity management or access control, which gets more searches?
I think it should be access controls, but I bet it's identity management. People think they can solve access with identity, but they can't.
I would say identity.
Okay, so you're both saying D, yes?
Both
Yeah,
saying
D.
D.
And the correct answer is? No. Okay, so you're not going to have a perfect score here. A lot of people said D2, but we got a few E's here. Okay. So I think we may have a lot of people who are 2 for 2 so far. Let's go to the next one. Security awareness or risk mitigation? What do you think?
I would
What do you
go
think?
risk mitigation.
I'm going to buck the trend and say security awareness.
Okay, we're splitting the topic. So one of you is going to be ahead of the other. It looks like we got split in the audience too. It looks pretty split here. Although it looks like more, I think maybe a little more towards risk mitigation. I'm sorry. So Richard is risk mitigation. Brian is security awareness, and the correct answer is risk mitigation by a lot. Oh my
By a
God,
lot,
look at
yeah.
that.
All those 0 days. All those 0 days.
All right. Let's see what happens on the very last one. Here we go. Questionnaire or framework?
Oh.
Now, let me stress this. This is all people searching on Google, okay? And also, these terms can also mean something else, too.
Yeah, I'm going to. So we have a long and storied history at Varonis with the word framework. Who anybody who's been a Varonis customer for the last 15 years knows. So I would love to pick framework, but when you think about this and everybody, I'm going to say questionnaire.
Okay.
I'm going to go with the framework because there is just another effing framework almost every week. So I'm going to assume that it is the framework side of it.
Okay, so as I understand, it's 2-1 right now with Richard ahead. Am I correct on this? Did I get this right? Let's see if this is going to be tied or Richard's going to pull ahead, and it is questionnaire. Very good. Tied score between the two of you. Excellent job, both of you gentlemen. Let me go to the crowd. Did anyone get 4-4-4 on that one? Anyone? I'd be interested to know. Here, let me hide this. Hide. Let's get back into business here. All right. So I want to go back to something. Oh, actually, wait, before I go into with something you said, we do actually have some questions that come in right now. This comes from Buckaroo B, who I'm going to assume means Buckaroo Bonsai. Buckaroo asks, is a SOC 2 the best way to vet third-party risk? Type 1 or Type 2 preferred?
I have thoughts, but Richard lives this, so I'll let him answer first.
Okay.
Yes and no on that side of it that's there. Again, part of cloud and everything else, there is a shared responsibility model. Your SOC 2 that you're going to get is the portions of what they're responsible for, not what you're responsible for. So if you're having a third party that's hosting in one of these, they're going to be a portion of that they're 50%. So if you're asking for this, you're only going to get a 50% answer around some of the areas that are going to be on that, whether it's that and who's SOC. Again, Amazon's, the third party, who's are you going to pull in to get some of those? And it's a litmus test. It's a smoke detector. It is something that's going to say if they have it, they have done some level of due diligence that's there. If they have nothing like that, then you know what, you may, or if they provide you with the cloud provider's SOC, then you know that you're in trouble at that point in time. But yeah, it is a litmus test to tell you good, bad. Should I look deeper? Should I look not? And I think that's what you need at some level, shape, or form.
All right.
Yeah, Richard stole the word.
Trying to bring you on to stage. Keep talking. I'm trying to bring you on stage as I was messing with it. Here we go. Oh, your sound went out. Hold on, wait. Hold on.
Oh, was I muted there? Sorry.
Yeah, you were muted there for a second. Repeat whatever the last thing you just said was.
Yeah, so if a provider isn't SOC 2 certified, then sure, that's probably disqualifying. But that does not mean that just because they are SOC 2 certified, because Richard makes the exact right point. It's a shared responsibility model. It does not mean that they have good policies in place to protect your data. It does not mean that they're going to help you with access control. It does not mean that they have good security policies in general. Other than that, they have a specific set of controls that protect the data center where their application is hosted. It's a good first step. It shouldn't be the only thing that you rely on. Absolutely. I've heard lots of nightmare stories from CISOs who feel like they have a good handle on their own controls and they have a good handle on the controls for the third parties that they contract with, but it's the fourth party and the fifth party, it's the third parties of the third parties that you really have to worry about. And they're all SOC 2 certified, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're doing a good job of protecting your data.
Yeah, it would be the same thing of saying, hey, I can download any application from the marketplace, and it is perfectly safe to turn on and put it into my environment from that vantage point.
All right, I have another question. This comes from here, Jeff Lacey, who asks, how much success is anyone having with getting visibility into SaaS provider logs showing security events relating to their platform infrastructure administration? That is a damn good question. Is there any visibility? Either one of you jump in on this one.
I certainly have an answer because I work for a company that makes software that helps our customers not just ingest, but analyze and understand and translate and enrich logs.
So you're offering up this kind of like log event type stuff of other SaaS apps, yes? Or how
so it's not just logs, though. Logs are one piece of the puzzle. You also need to do good content inspection and data classification, and you also need to do you need to understand exposure. And in SaaS apps, it's not just, say, an access control list. It's also the configurations, the entitlements, the posture, how all of those combine to grant permission. Salesforce is a good example. For me to get access to a record in Salesforce, it's a combination of my profile's application settings, system settings, the permission sets, the permission set groups, the object settings, the sharing rules, and the mute permissions, and how all of those combine together. Go to your Salesforce team and say, show me what Brian can access, and they'll say, give us 2 weeks, maybe we can answer it. So these are very, very hard questions to answer, and just looking at logs doesn't mean you shouldn't be looking at logs, but just looking at logs isn't going to answer those questions.
Yeah. No, I totally agree that there's so many different ways. There's a cost. And sometimes if you want logs, guess what? You need to pay for this. You need to pay for a repository to process the logs. So it adds cost on that. Doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. It's just that, hey, if I'm trying to run this and I want to give logs and they're like, we don't have logs, or you request logs, there is a cost that's going to be associated with that in that. And they may go, we don't have logs, that's why we're not giving it. And think about too, is that we're used to stitching things and correlating things into events and everything else, where a lot of times the log sources you're getting in the cloud are not necessarily stitched together. They may be disparate sources, and now I have to all correlate these, put them together, extract them out, and be able to do it. And then there are some logs you will never see because the traffic's being dropped, external scans in your cloud presence and everything else. They're like, oh, well, none of this is being here. I don't want to worry about this because it's just the noise of the internet. Maybe. But those are things that are out there that is like, it is a disparaging set of information that you're bringing back. You may not have good fidelity in some of those logs, or they're not configured in some of those ways that give you the fidelity that you need. So you're getting something back, not perfect, not that. And there's always the question, all these providers have been in this industry for years, yet they are not coming out with a common logging format or anything else that's out there that they're providing a service to be able to make and manage these environments that are there because they're too fast building. Let's be honest. It's more fun to build than it is to plumb.
So just I want to remind our audience, we have no 10% better tips. I don't think we've got any. And so this is where I chastise the audience, and that they only give us bad ideas, or their bad ideas are far more in abundance than their good ideas. All right, Tim, slamming one. And Richard, you give us one too as well. All right. So the chastising, I find, works a little bit as well. Also, please don't forget to get your questions in. 2 good questions already, so we appreciate that. Thank you very much as well. But I have my own questions as well. So I want to go back to what you were saying, Brian, about the scans that you do at Varonis. And by the way, we are going to put up a poll just a little bit later. If you would like a warm handoff to Varonis, to Brian, or to get some more information, you'll just answer the poll. We will handle that directly for you. So that'll come up we'll have that in about 20 minutes or so. But we got other stuff to go on. So hang tight. We will have that. Also, if you have not registered for next week's Super Cyber Friday, please go ahead and do that now. Just click on the link at the bottom where it says Hacking SOC 2 for 11/3/23. All right, going back to what you were saying earlier, Brian, regarding the scanning. And you did actually answer some of this, but with all these kind of scans that companies offer up, like we'll show you problems in your environment, inevitably it's always stuff. There's plenty of stuff that people don't see. And again, you did answer part of this, but I want you to revisit this again. What is the part of this that people are just not aware of? And it is this sort of interconnectivity that we were discussing earlier, or is there something more to this?
Oh, there's a lot to that. So I think people don't realize the scope of the exposure that they have to third-party applications that they don't know about. I mean, every time we do this, if you're using any cloud at all, whether it's Azure or AWS or GCP or Salesforce, you have applications that are connected that you don't know about. And then what they really don't realize is the depth of access that those applications have, what they actually have access to. It's one thing to say, okay, here's Calendly and it's got access to our Azure environment because this person set it up. It's another thing entirely to be able to answer the question. And here's all the potentially sensitive data that's now been exposed, customer PII, source code, what have you, intellectual property, GDPR data, to this third party that we never vetted, that we never approved, and has absolutely no organizational or business need to have access to it. Suddenly, this is a potential breach. So this is the kind of thing that people don't understand. It's one thing to see the connection, that this app has access to this system. It's another thing entirely to answer the question, this app has access to this system, which grants it access to this data. I've said it to you, David, a ton of times, but nobody breaks into a bank to steal the pens. To Richard's point, these are all little cracks in the dam that a threat actor will take advantage of. And the key is nobody's getting into your environment through one of these API connections just for fun. They're going to go after data. That's the asset. And so if you don't really have the visibility of what data is being accessed by what data could be accessed by what, where the controls are broken, and beware of findings fatigue. You're right. There's lots of ways to do scans, but unless you have a plan for what is actually going to happen with the findings that you get, why did you do it?
That's okay. Yeah. That teases to the question I'm going to ask you, Richard. Okay. Because you've dealt with this, I'm sure, umpteen times. You get these unbelievable findings. How do you create a plan before you even do the scan? Because you know something's going to happen. So what do you do? Like, is there a plan before the scan? I guess is my question.
There should be plans before the scan because you know you're going to find something. It's like pin testing or anything else. You don't do a pin test for them to fail.
Yeah, and by the way, no one does a scan and go, "Oh, you're all clean." Like that's never ever happened, ever.
Never, ever, ever happened. So you know there's going to be there. So think about the application itself and the complexities around the application. Do you have the resources to fix that? Because sometimes it's going to be in the code that I need to fix this. Sometimes it's going to be in the app configuration that's going to be that's there. Sometimes it's in the structure elements, the database, or anything else that's there. There's all these different places. Do you have the people internally, and do they have time to be able to work on this? Are you, we're in the 90-day crunch to launch something. We cannot take these people out. Well, I understand the scan. I understand the risk. That's a risk conversation between you and whoever. But you really have to think about when you're doing that, there's going to be resource requirements when the scan is done to be able to fix it. If you just hired a third party to go fix something or to come in and build something for you and they're no longer there, scan's going to tell you that you need to bring them back because why did you pay for bad code? I don't know. It should have been in your contract, but they did a bad job and you need to fix it. There may be a cost that's going to be associated with it that's there. And guess what? I don't have budget. I can't fix this. Okay, how long is that going to last? Somebody's going to pay for it to be fixed. So understand that. And then there's the prioritization. And it may be, you may have scanned one element or you may have scanned 1,500 elements in my cloud structure. Okay, what's the prioritization of that? Is it business focus? Is it third parties or interconnectivity? Is it, where is my prioritization on my risk? Where do I want to fix and provides the most danger either to my data, my customers, and where does that sit? And each business is different, and you got to figure out that recipe of like, yeah, we're really focused around this area, and that's what needs to be fixed. But there's got to be fixed. You need to pay, and there's got to be people involved to be able to manage it. If you're just getting the report to turn over to the business owner for that, you will be woefully depressed because they're going to be like, I don't have time for this. I'm not going to do it. It's there. You really have to get their buy-in before you do the scan. Because if you don't, they're going to push back because that's work for them. Then they're not able to move forward on a project or anything else. No one's sitting on the bench right now to think, hey, I need extra work.
By the way, I just posted this here. I'll show it again. This 10% better tip from David Peachy. If you know idea who your biggest third parties are, ask finance for a list of vendors that we pay the most money and start there. Which, by the way, I've heard this before, but he added the tweak of find out who we're paying the most to, which was a good way to start. Because that, again, your problem, the biggest.
Again, but just I love the tip. It's a great idea. But the number of times we find SaaS applications where the contract is ended, you're not paying anything, but they still have access because nobody ever shut it off is, I'll just say it's surprising.
Well, then we look at last year's and the years before, actually, is what you have to do. It sounds like. Hey, we are just a few minutes away from playing the Department of Yes. I want to remind people to click the link at the bottom of the screen. Oh, and I just saw a ton of questions just came in. Let's go take a look at them. This comes from, all right, this is a good question. Here, I'm going to start this. From James Olson. He asks, how many times a year should you execute an internal audit of your third-party vendors and their access? Because I know once a year is too few. Every week may be too many. What do you think? I'm going to throw it to both of you. What do you think is a comfortable amount?
I think this speaks to the answer that Richard just gave about fixing the problems. Unless you can do this relatively automatically, if it takes a lot of manual work, you're probably not going to do it more than once a year. Because who's got the time and the resources laying around in order to do this? It should be a priority, but frankly, businesses exist to make money. And unless this is going to significantly reduce risk, it's a very hard thing to get prioritized. This is why automation is so critical, not just in taking care of the risks that you find, but in even being able to perform the audit. Unless you can do it relatively automatically, hint, it's going to be very difficult to do on a regular basis.
No, I think it's also you have to take in some business functionality into that. What's the term of the contract? Is it a 1-year contract or is it a 3-year contract around that? So look for some of the business initiatives of that, because at the end of the day, if the audit fails, what are you doing? It really sucks if you did it it's kind of one of those, if you're halfway through and you figure out that they're not real and you want to get a new vendor, well, you're going to probably end up paying for it, or you already cut the check at that point in time. So use some things of like, when are you going to pay? When are you going to do it? So if you have those discussions, it's not like we have audit findings and we just paid you for this year's service. There's no pressure that you can apply or anything else. That's just goodwill that wants to happen. If I haven't got paid yet and you're going to hold up my thing, well, then that's a different conversation to have. But use some business acumen to go back in and figure those pain points out in your organization, and leverage those when you're trying to do these audits on that they're properly timed. I think that's more important than the quantity of it. It's like knowing when you're going to have those so that you meet their deadlines, and also you come back with their other side of it, that if I need to leave or get rid of or get well, I'm not left with please, please, please kind of situation.
All right, I want to get to one more question here, and this actually comes from Rich Straffolino, one of our reporters over at the CISO series. And I'm going to tweak his question too. He said, if you're coming into a new environment, how do you start getting a handle on third-party risk? But I'm also going to say, because I was talking to a CISO yesterday who got to build a greenfield situation, how do you get a handle on your environment if you're starting greenfield as well? I'm going to throw that. So coming in new, and I know it's a different situation with greenfield. Brian, how would you answer this one?
I think where we've seen people have success in this is, if you're coming into a new environment, assume that you don't know what you don't know. I think where people get trapped is where you start looking for problems in the places where you know there are probably problems, but it's not what you know that's going to kill you, it's what you don't know. And this makes it very difficult, but this is why we do the assessments in the way that we do, because we know that we're going to find things that we don't know about. I remember a CISO stopping a meeting and saying, why are there 150,000 credit card numbers in that person's OneDrive? That violates a dozen different policies. That's insane. Why would anybody do that? And I said, I don't know, but that's just, it's just what happens. Data's like life in Jurassic Park. It finds a way. So assume that you don't know what you don't know. And then if you start from that assumption, you tend to be better off in finding the problems that you need to fix.
All right. I'm going to go to our next game. Hold on.
Hello, welcome to the Department of Yes, where no request is ever rejected.
All right, as you know how this game is played, we have some bad ideas that our audience has submitted. None of these are wise, but you are going to embrace them without being facetious and explain why you want to do this. And okay, this actually speaks to what you literally just said, Brian, and this comes from Brian Colt. Remove the administrative overhead of managing company cloud apps and have employees use their own OneDrive, G Drive, iCloud accounts for file storage and sharing. Why do you want to do this?
Because as we've said, we live in a world where cloud providers operate under a shared responsibility model. And once you shift the burden of governance and access control to the users who know what this data is, I know what's inside my OneDrive and my G Drive and my Box account. You don't. Security doesn't. IT doesn't. I know what's in there, and I can make the best decision. You should put the power of governance and security into the hands of the users who know what that data is, and assume that they are going to make the best decisions about their business assets.
Because you did the security awareness training. You did your responsibility. You explained what they need to be responsible.
They sat in front of that computer for at least 15 minutes. I don't know if they were listening or watching or if it was muted, but they did that, and I can prove
They
it.
did do it. Richard, why do you want to do this?
Oh, it's ubiquitous access. And we're already doing it. Why not carry it forward? Look at your phone. It has OneDrive. It has Google. It has stuff that I can put it in there. I could sign on with Facebook, Google, Microsoft to platforms and web, and you want me to put a multi-factor kind of thing to access the data that's there. It's my data. I can protect it better than you can. I can give access to people that need to have access to it. It's easier to send. I don't have the stupid limitations via email. Have you ever tried to send an executable or something that's around an organization? It stops it and doesn't want it to do. You're trying to stop me from doing my job. This is going to help me do my job.
Also, if they use their private accounts suddenly it's not company data. So it's really not our problem anymore.
There you
Exactly.
go. You're just pushing the problem down, literally lifting. Wow. Here's the thing.
Lift and shift and
By the way,
dump.
I think I'm going to solve major security issues. If you push all risk and responsibility down to individual employees and things happen and the individual employee is liable, not the company, wow, that changes risk in a huge way. Are we all on board?
We're all on
Ryan?
board.
1,000%.
Yeah, I like this already. All right, here, let's go with the next. All right, this is an interesting take here from Tim. Don't worry that, and Richard, you're going to answer this one first. Don't worry, the cloud providers know what they, don't worry. I'm sorry, I have to put in some punctuation here. Don't worry. The cloud providers know what they are doing right. Of course, right? As long as I understand on-prem security, I automatically understand the cloud model. No problem whatsoever. Richard, are you on board here?
It's tech. It's that file access, the building blocks and foundation that we've used for our environments since the get-go is the same things that the cloud uses. They just name it differently. They use different semantics and different things. It's still access control. It's still a firewall rule. It doesn't do multiple things. It allows or drops traffic. It uses IP addresses, host names. I can do everything that I did in that. It's just a different GUI and just an easier simplex that if I do one thing, I don't have to run a script to do it 30 other different places. It automatically moves it and does it correctly. And they've been in business forever. We've used Microsoft products. We buy everything from Amazon. They have a great online shopping store, so they must know how to do cloud correctly.
All right. I like that. Brian, at the beginning, it was like, wait, I don't know if you fully understand cloud, but then you start to, and like, you still do get it. Brian, why do we?
The biggest problem with security on premises is just having a good firewall. And with the cloud, you don't even need to worry about that. They wouldn't let these companies put applications or infrastructure up on the internet unless it was already secure. And the fact that you're even questioning that a cloud provider would offer an application, a data store, or some sort of infrastructure that wasn't secure means that you don't really understand the cloud or the internet. And frankly, I think you shouldn't be in IT at all. So I don't think you need to worry about what they're doing. You should just assume that since it's up there, it's safe.
Good job, Brian. That was very good. By the way, both of you, I want to just commend both of you playing the Department of Yes so damn well this time. I don't think we've had two contestants play so damn well closely. So I want to give kudos to both of you. And also to Tim and Brian and everybody else for their bad ideas. Excuse me. Excuse me. We will pick a best bad idea winner, and that will be announced next week as well. All right. And we are getting some good 10% better tips. I do want to ask a question that came in that is very much directed at you, Brian, and this comes from Michael Williams. How are you able to, quote, scan the entire environment, including third-party apps, BYOD, et cetera? This is all for you, Brian.
Yeah, so we do a data risk assessment, and what we do is we scan the core places where all these apps are connecting into. So we scan the AWS environment, the Azure environment, the Salesforce environment, the Google environment, and then you can see the applications that are registered and what they have access to. In each one of these platforms, I'm just mentioning cloud, we also do this on premises. We look at the infrastructure configuration. So we look at the identities, we look at the accounts, we look at the entitlements, we look at the posture and configuration, we look at the access controls, we look at the shared links, we scan the data, we monitor.
And that will give you the insight on the BYOD stuff?
Yeah, just the 365 is a good example. If you go into Azure AD or Entra ID, as they call it now, you can see every application that's been registered and under what credentials it's been registered. And then when you connect that to the data stores itself, either SharePoint or OneDrive or what have you, you can see what they actually have access to. So that's just one example, and you have to do that in each one of those providers. That said, this question is phrased in a way that is designed to make me lie a little bit. How are you able to scan the entire environment? Well, there may be some things that we don't see because they are not connected to a core platform or data store that we do see. So we look at the core data, we look at the core infrastructure of where all this stuff lives, and that's where most of these third-party apps are connected. That said, there's going to be blind spots.
So, would the blind spots be my personal OneDrive?
Yes, because if you're using, for instance, Dropbox is even a better example because most users will have a personal Dropbox, and a lot of organizations aren't using Dropbox Enterprise. Or if you have a personal box, we would only see into, or Slack. If you have if your company's using a free Slack instance, like we require an enterprise Slack instance for us to connect into. So that would, like the personal instances or the free ones would be blind for us.
All right. You know what? We're at the time to throw out that other poll. So we do have one poll. The poll, if you would like a nice warm handoff to Brian and or anyone over at Varonis to get one of these awesome scans and stuff, please, Aaron, throw out the poll. There's only two options there. We can warm handoff or just get some more information. So please answer that if you'd like more information from them. Richard, what have I not asked here? Because we're coming down to our last 15 minutes of the show. What am I not addressing here in this discussion?
I think it's part of the side of it that you can look at it and say, I have things in cloud, I have things potentially on-prem, but they may migrate or move between. I may have things go on-prem to go to the cloud, and I may decide the cloud's too expensive. I need to move things back on-prem on that. And I think the move process is very not understood on that. And I think when you start connecting applications, it's one thing when we went through on-prem and I had to create firewall rules and access control rights and accounts. In the cloud, click buttons, allow things there, that ease seams of configuration. But I think that's where you run into a lot of the sides of it, is that, especially with third parties and everything else that's there, the application's running, we used to have to make those changes to that. And I think that's part of the issue, and this is one of the things that Brian keeps bringing up, that I think is when you establish that, or your third party establishes that, those rights and that ripple effect, you don't see it. You don't have any inkling that it's happened on that. The same, and I think that's part of the side of it, is that it's not affecting you. It's not poisoning you. It's not making your app run slower, not costing you anything. Nothing is happening, but you're at risk that that's actually there. And I think that's the bigger point that a lot of people don't understand, is that if you don't look, you'll never see it, but you'll never get signs that it's actually bad. And I think that's the bigger thing, is that you will inadvertently have a significant event and knock you down, and you'll never know it's coming. You had no inkling that this was a problem, this was an issue, and you're blindsided by it. And you may not even know how things happened on that. And I think that's the biggest risk that you run into, is that you'll be blindsided by these events that you will never know were there because you never looked or cared to look, or if you did, no one told you what was actually there.
All right, I just want to give some tips on, or mention the 10% betters that have come in. Also, this is only this little button at the bottom of the screen where it says register for Hacking SOC 2. That's going to be happening next Friday. Please click on it, because that is going to disappear in a few minutes. Or, by the way, our meetup that we're going to have immediately after this. And I see there's a lot of you online, and so we'd like you to join us for the meetup. So please stick around for our meetup immediately after this as well. All right. From Tim, make sure you are providing training for your teams on your top cloud provider architectures. That seems obvious, but what's interesting is that often what we hear is, getting cloud security or cloud architect type people is really expensive. Well, you know what isn't expensive? Paying for the training, or sometimes you don't have to pay for it. It's free for all these cloud architectures. Agree, Brian?
Yeah, although I think you're looking, that's one side of the problem. I think one of the key things with all of this third-party risk is that it's being driven by business and non-technical users, where there's no AWS training that you're going to give to your marketing department.
That is a good point.
They don't care. They just want to. They got a job to do.
Right. Were you about to say something?
Yeah, no, I definitely so on that side of it. That's there. It's the cloud architect and the money that you're saying is really expensive will not even begin to cover the cost of a breach or the cost of an incident on that. Hands down, it's not even equation on that. There is a couple of zero places that you're missing on that side.
This comes from Tim Hahn, not the same Tim that I just mentioned, different Tim. Use unique and this is right up your alley, Brian, by the way, use unique terms in your data classification policies to find unprotected data or detect a breach using automated processes. Example, confidential, read, limited. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, I think what's interesting is that I think the best you could possibly hope for with this, it's not a bad idea, but it's about a 10% better.
No, yeah,
But
and
yeah,
hence
how
what
are
we
you
say,
going to
these aren't
enforce
grandiose
this? Yeah.
solutions, just little.
We've certainly seen that, and we do things like when we do risk assessments, looking for specific terms that the companies will know. But again, it's not the stuff that you know about; it's the stuff that you don't know about. So that is a good incremental, marginal improvement, but it's certainly not something to rely on.
All right.
Yeah. And I can give some comments on it,
Sure.
on that side of it as well. Full disclosure, I do believe that's the same Tim that actually works for me, which is really bad because the Department of Yes, he is actually going to now record this and deploy it as part of that.
And say, this is the advice Richard gives.
Exactly.
Which, by the way, I'm waiting for someone to pull one of these clips, remove all context whatsoever. It goes, this is what Richard and Brian believe.
Yeah.
I mean, he said it on a podcast.
Exactly. and so what Tim is definitely talking about is like reducing false positives and things around that. Data has dates, data has categorization, and if you're not categorizing it, you know where it came from, where it lived in. I don't care about things such as a resume or something like that, but I do care about sales quarters, roadmaps, projections, features, functionality, and things around that. Over the experience, you start getting a feel for like a model that you can use. And you just build the model out. And it said the model is this plus this plus this. Now I alert on, instead of, hey, I alert on each one of these unique conditions, you're just drowning in alert fatigue on that. Here you get what's important, what you've decided was important, and contains it. And I don't violate data sovereignty issues or anything else because I just look for the file that has those keywords and not pull back the file for examination or look and feel in some of those as well.
I want to mention one more of these great tips from Saskia. And just one quick thing, if anything you've actually seen in this remark, and this is not played up enough, but we do reference it a lot on our shows, and that is Saskia Hoffman suggests 10% better tip. Don't forget to bring donuts to the help desk. They know what's happening, will tell you if you're nice. So I'm going to ask you, just give me one thing. What is one thing that you've discovered from the help desk that you were clueless about, Brian?
I used to work in a help desk, and I think everybody should. And this is a story I tell a lot. My boss told me, guy named Joe Tedesco, he's like, Brian, the fastest way to get us in trouble, and by that I mean get you in trouble, is if you try to fix something and you don't know what's going to happen. So make sure you know exactly what's going to happen when you try to fix something. And it's relevant for today because if you start turning off or disabling third-party app access, you don't know what you might break. And unless you're really, really clear on that, be careful.
That is a very good tip. Richard, what is one thing you learned from the help desk that you didn't have a clue about?
Tickets make the world go round. So if you learn one thing,
if it's not in a ticket, it doesn't exist.
It does not exist. And you can close a ticket without any explanation for it whatsoever that was done. Or the best one is AV Scan RAN. Is kind of the universal coverage of anything, even if it doesn't involve AV malware or anything else. It solved all security problems that's there. So if you really want to figure out what's happening, you can go pull all the tickets, look for the end results, and then all of a sudden you know what they're actually using as the filler, more along the lines of it. So if they have templated queues on that, you know they never looked at the problem on that side of it that's there. And I would say the one thing from the help desk to combat help desk fatigue, reopen tickets because it affects someone's metric. Never let them open a new ticket for you because their metrics are not affected.
Oh, good point. Now, I'm going to close up, but I do want people to click on the poll to get a nice warm handoff to the people at Varonis. They are nice people to talk with. We like them. Brian, we like. So please click on that if you'd like to know more, especially, I mean, who wouldn't want to have a clue what's going on in their environment right now. Let me just wrap this all up. Next week, we will have our Hacking Sock 2. If you have not clicked the button, you literally have seconds now to click on it. But you can always go to CISOseries.com. We will have this actually at the top of the screen very soon. But you will always find this and our future events on the events page, our in-person and virtual events as well. All right. Varonis, thank you so much for sponsoring this event. And I want to thank our guests, Richard and Brian as well. And we do have about 5 minutes left, so we might be able to squeeze in 1 or 2 more questions. But I just want to close this all up. In 95 minutes from now, CISO Series show, Cybersecurity Headlines Week in Review will be happening. And we have Arvind Bansal, who's a former CISO for the Americas for Nissan Motor Corporation. We had him on before. He was awesome. I actually just met him in Nashville. He's fantastic. That is actually on the CISO Series YouTube channel. It's not here on Crowdcast, but on YouTube. So please join us there. You can participate in chat. You'll also see it actually on LinkedIn as well. And you can participate in chat there. But please feel free to come to YouTube as well and join that. Hey, stick around for our meetup. Now, Aaron, you can change that link. And look at that. Boom. Join our meetup here. You could actually click on that link right now and get your quick registering to get on TUKID. It's super fun. If you've never done it, please join us. It's a lot of fun. We would love to see you there. All right. And lastly, you want to sponsor Super Cyber Friday? Guess what? We have exactly 1 left in 2023. The very last one in December. If you would like to sponsor that, we would love to have you. And we have plenty open in 2024. But please register. Just email me, or excuse me, email me if you want to do one of these, david@cisoseries.com. All right, let me hide this and let us get to, what do we got? Actually, let me just ask you, with the 4 minutes left right now, Brian, any last thing you would like to say to our audience in terms of Varonis, what you guys are offering, how to get connected with you, all those wonderful things?
Yeah, so I'm assuming that if you take the worm, you want more information, somebody will reach out to you. The risk assessment that I've talked about is really low touch. We're a SaaS now. So, if you had experience with Varonis in the past and it's, I don't want to spin up databases and I don't want to spin up infrastructure, now it turns on in about half an hour and we'll look at everything on-prem, everything in 365, Salesforce, AWS. We're looking at databases now. We're looking at S3. We're looking at Azure Blob. We're looking at all kinds of.
So it's a soft touch experience. It's
very soft.
Not as
invasive. It takes a couple of weeks. Come back and you're going to know a lot of unknown unknowns. So we'd love the chance to work with you.
But I like having a plan before the scan. I like this.
Yeah, I'm going to steal that.
In fact, Richard Straffolino created a hashtag of that. Plan before the plan. Letter B, number 4, scan. Plan B4 scan. Richard, any last words right here?
No, I great fun and everything else. Definitely the headlines. I can't give enough credit that if you want to finish off of like a week on a Friday afternoon of like all the bad stuff that's happened, because you've already put Monday and Tuesday out of your mind because of Thursday. It's a great time just to get a recap on that and see people's things of some of the headlines. Very useful and entertaining as all the programs are.
All right, we do actually have 2 minutes left. I want to see if we can get this one question, squeeze this one in before we wrap it up. And again, please stick around for the meetup. We want to see you there. Please come. All right, this one I like. How do you keep up with the changing settings in Microsoft 365? Now, I know they are not unique to this, but I'm assuming they change more. Microsoft will have a setting here today and somewhere else tomorrow. The configuration options change basically daily. Obviously, Saskia has been dealing with this and is irritated by it. Mm-hmm. Brian, what's your answer?
So first of all, this is a big problem I see everybody face. Let us help. You can't. This has been the domain of posture management, which Saskia talked about. We were chatting a little bit about this. But the problem is with, especially Microsoft, it's not just security posture. There's configurations that go down to the data level that you need to know about. I made the joke that Microsoft probably has a configuration center dashboard somewhere at some level of licensing that you can get, or if they don't, they will at some point. This is the kind of thing that we can help with, but it's something that you absolutely need to be mindful and aware of, because any one misconfiguration can lead to a disaster. As Richard said, that's one.
We hear this story all the time.
Yep.
All right, quickly, anything to add to this, Richard? Because we have to wrap it up in 30 seconds.
It's exactly the same thing. And yeah, if you just think about this, if you went and got trained on something, guess what? The new version, it's somewhere else. And the next version, it's somewhere else. So don't ever think that those 2 weeks that you spent training, you're not going to have to spend them the next month because the version changes. So it's something that's there. Keep on, ask. Community's full of people, and a lot of times, do you know where they hid this? That will get you an answer that you're actually there. Sometimes
David
the
Cross
wrong
says
version-
everything can be automated using PowerShell for Microsoft 365.
I mean, he's not wrong, but listen, you can do everything in XML too.
All right. We have to wrap this sucker up. The time is, we've had to hit the end. Oh, in fact, 4 seconds left. Let's wrap it up. Let's hit it at 1 hour. Click the button at the bottom of the screen.